A man was locked away for decades, his face forever hidden behind a mask. This is the enigma of the man in the iron mask, a prisoner whose true name became one of history's greatest secrets. By the end of our journey, you will have the evidence to decide for yourself which of the incredible theories holds the most weight. Was he a royal twin, a threat to the throne of the Sun King himself? Or was he a disgraced servant who knew too many dangerous state secrets? We will sift through the clues from 3 centuries ago, piecing together a puzzle designed to be unsolvable. What kind of person do you imagine was worth hiding so completely from the world? Our story unfolds in the glittering shadow of the Sun King, Louis XIV, a monarch whose absolute power demanded absolute control. This was an era where a single whispered secret could topple a dynasty, and it is in this world of opulence and paranoia that our masked prisoner appears. He was not held in one location but moved between several fortresses, with his final and most famous prison being the Bastille in Paris. His treatment was a study in contradictions. He was a captive, yet he was often provided with finer clothes and food than a common criminal. His every need was attended to, yet his greatest need, his identity, was brutally denied. The mask itself is a point of legend and correction. While stories call it iron, historical accounts describe it as black velvet, a fabric that would have been stifling and humiliating, but far more practical for long-term wear. This detail makes the mystery even deeper. Why the theatricality of a mask at all, if not to send a very specific, terrifying message? The men tasked with his custody were no ordinary jailers. The Minister of War, the Marquis de Louvois, gave the initial orders, and the prisoner was placed under the lifelong watch of Bénin d'Auvergne de Saint-Mars. Saint-Mars was a loyal and ruthless man who followed his charge from prison to prison, a constant shadow in the prisoner's life of isolation. The protocols were absolute. No one was permitted to speak to the masked man. His guards were instructed to kill him instantly if he ever tried to remove his covering or reveal his name. He lived in a silent world, his days marked only by the routines of his confinement. He was allowed to play his guitar and attend mass, but always behind the veil, forever separated from humanity. This strange existence ended on November 19, 1703. The prisoner died and was buried under a false name, but the effort to erase him did not stop there. In a frenzy of finality, every single item from his cell was burned. The very walls were scraped clean and whitewashed. Every piece of clothing, every utensil, every scrap of paper was utterly destroyed. It was as if the French crown was trying to purge him not just from the present but from history itself. This was not a standard procedure for a typical prisoner. This was the treatment reserved for someone whose very existence was a threat to the throne. So who could possibly warrant such an extreme and lasting silence? This theory suggests the prisoner was a living ghost, the secret twin of Louis XIV himself. Imagine the implications. An identical older brother would possess a birthright that surpassed the Sun King's own, a permanent, breathing challenge to his divine right to rule. The very existence of such a twin would shatter the carefully constructed image of Louis as the singular, God-appointed monarch. This is the heart of the royal twin theory, a story given life by writers like Voltaire and Alexander Dumas, capturing the public imagination with its Shakespearean drama. Why would a king go to such extremes? The answer lies in the brutal logic of absolute power. A hidden twin is not a brother, he is a contingency plan gone wrong. He is a figurehead waiting for rebellious nobles to discover, a key to unlock the throne. Keeping him alive but utterly erased was a way to neutralize the threat without the sin of fratricide, turning a king into a permanent, silent ghost. But the practicalities of this scheme are almost impossible to fathom. How do you hide a royal birth in a palace swarming with courtiers, midwives, and diplomats? There would need to be a conspiracy of silence on an unimaginable scale. with every single person involved in the Queen's delivery either bribed, exiled, or silenced forever. Furthermore, the meticulous records of the French court, which document everything from state visits to royal ailments, show no gap, no hint of a second son born to Anne of Austria. For a theory so grand and emotionally compelling, it stands on a foundation of pure absence. There is no document, no letter, no credible witness from the time that confirms a twin was ever born. This is the great divide between a thrilling story and historical fact. The theory persists not because of evidence, but because of its powerful narrative appeal, a dark fairy tale of brother against brother, hidden behind a mask of velvet. While the royal twin theory captures the imagination, history often presents more practical, if less glamorous, answers. The name Eustache d'Orge emerges not from legend, but from the ink-stained pages of official correspondence. In the meticulous letters of the jailer Saint Mars himself, we find a prisoner by that name, a man whose timeline and circumstances align perfectly with the masked captive. This is the suspect favored by many historians, a figure grounded not in romantic fiction, but in the cold, hard evidence of state documents. So who was he? Eustache d'Orge was not a nobleman or a prince. He was a valet, a servant, but this was no ordinary position. He served close to powerful figures entangled in the affair of the poisons, a sprawling scandal that saw accusations of witchcraft and murder reach the highest levels of King Louis's court. In this viper's nest of intrigue, a valet was perfectly positioned to see everything and hear everyone. He would have been a silent witness to clandestine meetings, a carrier of secret messages, and a repository of dangerous knowledge. His very existence became a liability. Knowing too much about the sins of the aristocracy was a fatal condition, and permanent, silent imprisonment was the only cure that would prevent those secrets from ever seeing the light of day. This theory lacks the dramatic punch of a hidden heir, but it carries a different, more chilling kind of weight. It suggests that the man in the mask was a victim of simple, brutal political expediency. He was not hidden because of who he was by birth, but because of what he knew. His mask was not about concealing a royal face, but about silencing a common tongue forever. The state's extreme measures to erase him make perfect, horrifying sense if he held information that could topple ministers or implicate the king's own inner circle. Yet, even this plausible explanation is not without its own lingering questions. Why maintain such an elaborate and costly secrecy for over 3 decades for a mere servant? The mystery, it seems, refuses to be solved so easily. But Eustache d'Orge is far from the only name whispered in connection to the Velvet Mask. The mystery's long shadow falls upon several other compelling figures, each with their own story of downfall and disgrace. One of the most prominent is Nicolas Fouquet, the immensely wealthy superintendent of finances for King Louis XIV. Fouquet's life was a tale of spectacular ambition and an even more spectacular fall. He built a magnificent chateau, hosted lavish parties, and essentially lived like a king, which was his ultimate mistake. He was arrested for embezzlement and sentenced to life imprisonment. For a man of his former status, the mask could have served as the ultimate humiliation, a constant, visible reminder that his identity, his very self, had been erased by the king he dared to rival. Yet, Fouquet's imprisonment is well documented, and he died in 1680, years before the masked prisoner's own death. While the idea of added punishment is intriguing, the timeline simply does not align. Another candidate is the Duke of Beaufort, a flamboyant and rebellious nobleman known for his popular support and defiance of royal authority. His sudden disappearance from public life could theoretically fit, but historical records indicate he died in combat during a siege, a very public death that makes his candidacy highly unlikely. Then we have the case of Ercole Antonio Mattioli, an Italian diplomat and count. His story is perhaps the most convincing after d'Orge's. Mattioli was entrusted by Louis XIV to secretly negotiate the purchase of the strategically vital fortress of Casale from the Duke of Mantua. In a colossal miscalculation, Mattioli double-crossed the Sun King, revealing the secret treaty to several rival states in exchange for his own bribes. Louis XIV, enraged by this betrayal, had Mattioli kidnapped and imprisoned. His disappearance in 1679 aligns perfectly with the appearance of the masked prisoner. He was a high-ranking individual whose knowledge and actions posed a direct threat to French foreign policy. Imprisoning him in secrecy was a way to both punish the betrayal and prevent an international incident. So why isn't the case closed on Mattioli? The primary issue is the mask itself. While silencing a treacherous diplomat makes sense, the specific, theatrical punishment of a mask seems an extra, almost personal layer of vengeance for a political crime. The evidence for Mattioli is strong, but like every other theory, it is not quite perfect. Each suspect, from the fallen financier to the double-dealing count, offers a piece of the puzzle, yet the complete picture remains frustratingly out of reach. The weight of the evidence, when stripped of romantic legend, leans toward a simple, brutal truth. Eustache Dodger, the valet entangled in the darkest affairs of the state, remains the most probable candidate. He was not a prince, but a man whose ears held power enough to shake a kingdom. His silent, masked existence was the price for knowing secrets that could topple the mighty, a permanent solution to a problem that could not be simply eliminated. Yet, the absolute finality of his erasure, the burning of his possessions and the scraping of his cell walls, leaves a void of definitive proof. This absence is the very lifeblood of the legend. It is the crack in the historical record through which grander, more dramatic stories forever seep. The man in the Iron Mask has transcended his own history to become something far greater, a blank slate upon which we project our deepest fascinations with power, identity, and injustice. He is an enduring symbol of the individual completely consumed by the state, a silent question mark against the absolute authority of a king. So the mystery endures, not because the clues are not there, but because we are drawn to the shadow more than the man who might have cast it. Who do you believe he was, a forgotten royal, a disgraced servant, or a treacherous diplomat? The evidence is now yours to weigh. Share your verdict below, subscribe for more journeys into history's greatest enigmas, and remember, some truths are guarded not by locks but by silence itself.